Right, I think we can start. Participants are still coming in, but a bit more slower now. So, hi everyone. Welcome to this Fair Impact workshop on using Fuji to assess the fairness of your data. This session will be brought to you by Fuji's developer, Robert Huber, who's based at the University of Bremen. Al Wood from the Digital Curation Centre, who help ensure all of this runs smoothly. And myself, Ollie Parks, based at the UK Data Service, and I'll be discussing some of our experiences using Fuji. Today's session will be recorded and uploaded to the website, so feel free to turn off your camera if you don't want to be seen in the recording. So next slide. So in today's session, like I said, we plan to give you an introduction to Fuji, how it works, and some of the different metrics you can use to assess your repository's data. I'll be covering the UK Data Services experience using the tool to assess our collection, as well as how we and other SESDA service providers contributed to the upcoming version of the metrics. There'll also be 2 demos, how you can install Fuji locally, and how you can use the web application. And then we'll finally open up the floor to you to ask some questions, and then we'll wrap up the session. So the next slide is onto Robert, who will be given an introduction to Fuji and some of the different discipline-specific capabilities. So I'll stop my share and hand over to Robert.
Okay, thanks, Ollie. So I will give you a short overview about Fuji, and the special focus of this talk is going to be here its new capabilities with respect to discipline-specific fair assessments and the metric we have created for that. So just a quick overview on the background of Fuji. So actually, this work on the tool already started during the Fairs Fair project. There in task 4.5, we actually provided 2 main components in this task. First, assessment metrics, fair assessment metrics, as well as some tools to use these metrics and to perform practical fair assessment on some use cases. Yeah, and so these 2 tools are here Fair Aware, which was designed to raise awareness of fair here during the collection and processing and compiling data. And Fuji here is designed to, well, of course, perform fair assessment after data has been archived within the trustworthy data archives. So these 2 main components actually have been a response to some priority recommendations which have been published in this Turning Fair into Reality report from the European Commission, which changed a lot during the last years. The work continued in Fair Impact, and just a quick overview on the capabilities of the tool or the basics with respect to the metrics. So these are designed hierarchically. So we have several metrics for each FAIR principle, similar to well, other metrics or FAIR metrics are organized. And additionally, we actually defined practical tests for each metrics, 1 or more practical tests. Here, for example, is a metric which assesses if data has a persistent identifier, and potential practical tests would be then to test if the identifier is compliant with a persistent identification scheme, and another would be to test if the identifier actually is registered, so if it is redirected, for example, or resolved. This organization is here reflected in the unique identifier we assign to each metric and test, which looks as is displayed on the right upper corner here. So the tool Fuji, the name we gave it comes from the Malaysian word uji, which means simply test. So the the former main developer of the tool, Surya Devaraju. She was from Malaysia, and she came up with this idea. And F, of course, stands for fair. So F minus UJI means fair test. The tool is available as open source. This GitHub repository and some more information is already available at a dedicated web page, which you can reach at f-uji.net. So FUJI can be used in two ways. First, you can simply download the code. I will show later on how this can be done and install the tool locally. FUJI is designed as a REST service. So this means you can use the tool then here within your computational workflow or wherever, and simply here run calls against the API, which is here designed following the Open API specification. The result output is a JSON file, which contains all the necessary information for you if the test is passed, the score, and it contains some other information like here debug information, what which gives you just an overview on what has happened in the background. The human-friendly way to use FUJI is here using the web demo we provided on top of this API, which can be accessed at the web page I just mentioned. So here you just get a human-friendly output of the test result. You get a nice overview on the summary score, and for each metric, there is a detailed information window which you can take, which informs you about here the individual test results and yeah, what has been found by the tool which justifies this result. Yeah, during Fair Impact, we continued that journey, and the task for the team was to extend FUJI to become disciplinary context aware. So this required to define disciplinary metrics, and these tests and metrics have been defined in cooperation with use case partners. So Fair Impact is designed around dedicated use case partners from various disciplines, life sciences, and so on. And initially, we focused on social sciences and humanities, which was the community or use case which was defined in the description of work. So this was an obligation. And in addition, we also took a look at other communities, just like the earth and environmental sciences community, for which also some EOS projects, which are well focusing on fairness of earth and environmental data, are currently funded and running, like Fair Ease and so on. So our approach here was to actually investigate existing fair implementation habits or strategies of these communities. To do this, we used existing technical interfaces, which, if they were available and accessible, for example, like Open Archives Initiative Protocol, which gives a good overview on the metadata standards which are used, as well as here white papers and publications and so on. And very interesting was also here the use of fair implementation profiles, FIPs, which helped a lot to collect dedicated fair implementation information directly from the yeah, for example, data archive providers. So these have been used, and based on this information, we collected preliminary design proposals for the metrics, for which we then went back to the communities and asked for feedback. So this was an iterative process, and just to illustrate the difficulties we had here was, for example, we started to investigate social sciences and humanities as a community, to approach this community. But immediately when we, for example, compared the metadata standards which are exposed by the large number of open archives initiative interfaces from both Chester and Clarion, which have very different scientific communities to serve for. So it became clear that internally the social sciences humanities community is not as uniform as to allow to define a dedicated fair metric for this as a whole. So we started to focus on the social sciences alone instead. So, and on the left side of the slide, you can see how we started to draft here some kind of convergence matrix based on the fair implementation profiles, which is simply just a matrix of supported standards, for example, and formats for each individual community member here. So that was the idea. And after we collected this information, we identified actually three main categories for which we were able to identify some commonalities with respect to fair implementation strategies. So first, the use of ontology is quite community specific. Here are some examples for the Earth and environmental communities, SOSAR and Global Change Master Directory vocabulary, for example, is frequently used. And of course, the metadata standards, which are used to exchange information between these repositories, is quite community specific. Here, for example, DDI is used a lot within the social sciences community, as well as here the ISO standard is very frequently used in the earth and environmental communities. So in addition, we also had identified specific metadata properties which are required from for each community. So these were then used as the basis. So this information or these specifics were used as to define discipline-specific metrics. In parallel, in particular for the social sciences, we collected here reference dataset collections for which we were then running the tests using the newly defined metrics. Ollie will later on show you how this went. So here's an example of how discipline-specific metrics definition looked like. So basically, we initially here used simple Word or Google Docs to describe this just as in a descriptive way. So this is an example, for example, for the social sciences, where we define the specific standards which are used by the community, which could, for example, be expected within a test, the DDI lifecycle, codebook, and so on. And so this was then circulated within the community. And in parallel, we already started to implement practical tests in F-UJI to apply this. So with respect to implementation in F-UJI, the tool had to be changed a lot. So first of all, F-UJI had to be made configurable. So tests and metrics already have been defined as a YAML file, but more or less this YAML file was just used to generate the output. So we started to use this YAML file also to define test requirements. For example, the target against the test has been run and the expected or required properties or content which are expected, as well as the score which has to be reached. So this was then all defined in a YAML file, and the F-UJI code was upgraded and improved to be able to read and interpret this information and to modify the test behavior according to this specification. So and also here the metric itself had to be here given as an input argument for the API, the service. So this is also another change to the tool in comparison to the version we used for FAIR. So this is just an overview on how this looks like in practice. On the right side, you see the YAML snippet, which defines a metric, for example, core data citation metadata is available. This test is just here, then test against here metadata properties. And here is a list given also for in required, which gives a list of those metadata properties which are expected to be present to pass the test. So these here specification, these URIs which are given here, for example, walkout metadata property and so on, this is all here now part of an internal F-UJI ontology in order to, well, to enable users to look up what all this means. And the terminology is just, well, it's relatively simple. It's each term has a name, a label, a URI, a identifier, then a source, so where it has been found. And in most cases, it also here refers to a specific field of science, if possible. So this is the background information we had to implement for these discipline-specific tests. And in practice, what users actually see now is if you go to the F-UJI webpage, you still can enter the DOI or URI of your datasets you want to assess. But in addition, you are given a choice of or a selection of available metrics. And here, for example, is the standard version 0.5 metrics, but you can see that in addition, the social sciences or social sciences metric is given as an optional test here. So this is how this looks in practice, and I think I'm already at the end of my talk here. So thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Robert. If you bear with me, I will share my screen again. My slides showing?
Yep, I can see them.
Thanks, Al. Yeah, so next I'll be covering the UK Data Services experience using F-UJI, including using the social science metrics that Robert sort of explained how they were developed in his previous slides. Before we start, though, I want to provide some context on the UK Data Service. We're a partnership made up of JISC, the Cathy Marsh Institute at the University of Manchester, University College London, EDINA at the University of Edinburgh, and the UK Data Archive based at the University of Essex, which is where I'm based. We're the UK's largest collection of economic, population and social research data, and the UK's service provider to CESDA, the Consortium of European Social Science Data Archives. Our collection is a mix of quality and quantitative data available across broadly available across 3 different access types: open, where anyone is free to download; safeguarded, where registered users are free to download; and secure, where only approved researchers can access the data in Secure Lab, which is our trusted research environment. Our collection is largely available from 2 different areas. Our main curated collection, which is where a lot of the larger surveys are held, and Reshare, which is our self-deposit collection that only undergoes deposit compliant checks and is where sort of PhD researchers will be mandated by the ESRC, which is our funding council, the Economic and Social Research Council, will be mandated to upload their data. This context will make a bit more sense in relation to F-UJI when I go on to the next slide, and it wasn't just sort of shameless plugging of the UK Data Service. So yeah, now we get to how we use F-UJI to assess our collection. Well, we use the web application to assess our collection, and the tool cannot assess an entire collection. So we took a sample which covered data from the different repositories I mentioned, so our main collection and our self-deposited collection. The sample covered different data types, quali and quant, but also sort of subtypes within those overarching categories. So we had different types of survey, So our cohort and longitudinal studies we hold, some of the cross-national studies we hold, as well as some of the census data and products we hold. We also make sure the sample covered across those 3 different access types I mentioned: open, safeguarded, and secure. And on top of this, we tested different target URLs and DOIs of the same object from our catalog. So if we were testing an open data set, we'd use the landing page URL, the DOI associated with the object, as well as the URL from CESDA's data catalog. So each object selected was tested a few times using different links. We run the tests against both the generic and the social science metrics. One, so we could understand a bit more about how F-UJI was interpreting our collection, and also because we were just interested to see how we might have compared how we did in the generic results versus how we were doing in the more specific social science tests. We exported our results as a JSON. We found this was helpful when comparing results from our sample, and it meant that we didn't have to rerun tests for the same object if we needed to know more or perhaps miss something. It also means in the future as well, we can compare our results against different versions of the tool and or metrics. So go to the next slide. So after we'd collected all our JSONs, all our results, we started to think about how we might analyze them and make the result more than just sort of a score. I think this sort of graph is a good visualization of our thinking. So as Robert mentioned, F-UJI starts at the FAIR principle. It breaks these down into metrics, so each principle can have one or more metric. And then these metrics are then broken down into tests, so each metric can have one or more tests. For us as a repository, we felt that for each of these tests, it can sort of be three main outcomes. Pass, so great, we don't have to change anything or do anything. We're quite happy with the result. Failed, where we felt we did well, where we did not meet the criteria to pass. And then this would then lead to a discussion where either we need to make a change as a repository to improve on the way we manage our digital objects. Maybe we felt that we should have passed and perhaps there's a bug in the system, in which case we might need to request the change to the tool, or no action, where we simply accept the fail and either do not see making the change as a priority or don't currently have the resource to make it. Similarly, we also discussed not found, where F-UJI is unable to conduct the tests, maybe because we need, and we felt similarly to the failed criteria, that we might need to make a change so F-UJI can assess us. Maybe we're not machine readable enough, so sort of a similar result as a fail. Or perhaps there was a bug in the tool where it's not reading or accessing the information it should, in which case that needs to be reported, or again, take no action. So what did we find out? Well, using the JSONs, we were able to review the results at the test level for each of our samples. For us, we found there was very little change in scoring across the majority of the variables I discussed earlier. We found the main factors were for a change. The main factors which resulted in a difference in scoring was whether we tested using a DOI or a URL, which makes sense as one of the tests is are you using a persistent identifier, and perhaps our metadata is structured in a way that F-UJI could not find the DOI of the object when using a URL. I've attached, or I've uploaded a screenshot of the spreadsheet we used to compare the results, just to give you an idea of how we've done it. It may or may not be useful to you, but this is sort of how we structured and compared the different results from across our sample. So sort of the next steps. Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. The next steps, once we'd reviewed the result, were highlighted several areas for us to improve. So we discussed implementing signposting to make our repository a bit more machine interoperable, a bit more machine readable, potentially adding additional metadata fields to make our data more fair. and it also led to a discussion around licenses. So other than our open data, which is made available through a UK Open Government license or a Creative Commons, our other licenses are all bespoke, which can make the steps to access data a bit more difficult for both humans and machines to understand what's going on. We conducted this analysis of our collection, as well as reviewed the suitability of some of the social science metrics alongside other SESDA service providers. So on top of our analysis, DANS in the Netherlands, the Finnish Social Science Data Archive, and SICT in Norway all conducted similar tests. We sort of discussed our results and comments amongst ourselves, and then fed back to Robert via the Fair Impact project. They've been included in either the current version of F-UJI or will be in the next iteration. Perhaps we can discuss that in the question and answer session later, because I lost track. But in terms of sort of yourselves as repositories that might not be part of Fair Impact, I'd recommend using F-UJI's GitHub to raise issues and comments, and the link is available on the slides. Yeah, so that is how we, the UK Data Service, used F-UJI to assess our collection and discuss sort of our results amongst other similar social science repositories in Europe. And next, I think Robert's going to give us a demo on how to use the local installation of F-UJI. So I will stop sharing.
Okay, I hope you can hear me and see also something. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
we can.
before you can start using F-UJI in your local environment, you have to go to the GitHub repo here, right? And just take a look at the available here releases, which are listed here. If you click there, you're redirected to the latest available F-UJI release, which is 3.4.0. A new one is going to be published quite soon, but here you can find the source code as a zip file. Simply click here and download. And okay, I already did that. And what you have to do is to take this zip file and unzip. Unzip at a folder you would like to. So I'm going to continue here, or yeah. So I have downloaded or moved the contents of the zip file here in the folder which I was calling F-UJI, the correct version. So you can see I have done this several times before. So this is simply the folder where all the files are in here. I'm doing this here on a Windows machine, so this is why I have to use these DOS commands. I hope this is not too irritating. So there is the source code, and I strongly recommend to actually set up a dedicated Conda environment or whatever environment you would like to use. And I'm just creating an environment so you can see what I mean. So something like F-UJI new or so. And I think I have to give the Python version. Oops. So let's see. No. use the command before, so it should. So now it is here creating a Python environment. So this means I can use the library, the F-UJI library, as well as all the other modules and libraries which are required by F-UJI in an isolated environment. So this is yeah, the preferred method to do so, because sometimes these Python libraries or modules interfere with each other in a, well, let's say, undesired way. So this takes a while now. Okay, so now I activate this environment. So, and as you can see here on the line, in between the bracket, the name of this environment is listed. So to install F-UJI, all we have to do is to type pip install dot. So this will then install the software and all the required libraries which F-UJI needs. So which is actually here reported. Takes a while. You can see that F-UJI is using quite a large number of libraries, and these libraries then also use another number of required libraries they rely on. So it now installs, obviously silently in the background a little bit, so we have to work. Beg your pardon for the duration of this exercise, but I thought it would be good to just show yeah, how this looks like. Okay, so it did not die. That's good. So now we have F-UJI installed here. In order to start the service, we have to stay at that folder where the F-UJI code actually is. And what we need to now execute is just the whole module. And F-UJI has a configuration file. So we have to inform F-UJI about the location of the configuration file also. So we do this by just adding or typing Python -m, which means module, and the module is F-UJI, which is called F-UJI server, and the configuration file by default. So you get a ready-to-use configuration file for your local host server. So you don't need to do anything here. Is located at F-UJI server /config/server ini. Think so. So that's all. So this actually then starts the server. So you will receive some messages which are launched from here connection and Swagger. So, and as you can see, the last message is UVcorn running on HTTP localhost and so on. So this is the web address where you then can find the service on your server. But one little thing has to be done before I stop the service. There is one problem with one module I discovered this morning because some of the libraries have changed, which is used. And this library is called NumPy, and there was a version jump from 1 to something to 2, and after version 2, this just don't work anymore with other libraries which are used. So we have to actually install this manually. So this is now overriding this NumPy module. As you can see, before it was 2.24, but we need a lower version here. Okay, so now we have this available. I'm going to start the server again using this Python command, and then hopefully it will run here. Okay, so to actually access the server, you have to just visit then localhost, and here on GitHub, there is information about actually this web address. You have to enter this Fuji/AP/version1/UI, and then you can access the standard Swagger user interface, which gives you the possibility to actually play with these Swagger interface. One thing which has to be done, you have to authorize. By default, the tool is not open to the public. There is a default user, Marvel, and Wonder Woman is the password. I'm going to show you in a minute how this can be changed. So as you can see, the latest Fuji version has actually 3 methods. The one which is interesting for us is this evaluate method, which is now allowing us to evaluate a given data set. There is an example here. You can click on try it out here on top. Then this gets active. So we have these parameters here, the object identifier, that's the DOI of the dataset we want to test. We can give some additional information to the tool, like an Open Archives initiatives endpoint. And we enable the use dataset parameter. This use GitHub is for the software fair assessment, which our colleagues from Edinburgh have implemented on top of Fuji. You can ignore these. And what is also important for us is the version of the metric we can provide, which Fuji then is using to execute the fair assessment. We click on execute, and it should run in the background. It takes a while because Fuji is then, of course, visiting the DOI URI, which is then redirected to here the Pangea landing page of that data set, and Fuji is then just running in the background all the tests and is visiting all the information or additional metadata sources it can identify based on the DOI and the landing page. Okay, so now we have a result here, which is here displayed as this JSON file. First, the JSON file gets some information about the request we launched, the identifier and the configuration we gave. So it is then informing us about the URI which was resolved, and the JSON gives also a quick overview on the test results. So for each fair principle, and later on you can see the the result for each individual metric, which starts here. So the JSON gives us then the ID of the metric, which is testing for the globally unique identifier. So it was here then testing if the URI we gave is compliant with a known identifier type. And as you can see, it was here successful. The test has been passed. And the reason is also listed somewhere. Should be in test output. Let me see. Okay, here we are. This is the output information where the service gave back that the found scheme was of DOI. So this is a persistent as well as a unique identifier. So therefore the test was passed. So this is how actually the output looks like. And yeah, I hope this helps you to understand a little bit on how the installation work and how you could use this this tool then on your own server. You can use the REST API, this URI, then, for example, in Jupyter Notebooks or wherever to perform tests on, well, yeah, potentially thousands of files we'd like to. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. I'm going to now give a quick demo on the web application. I'm going to make it quite quick because I've seen some comments in the chat that I think would be really nice to get back to. So if you follow, as sort of you've seen before in the earlier parts of the presentation, if you follow the link to F-UJI, you'll be met by the F-UJI web application. Before I go into assess, I'll just quickly mention the other parts of the F-UJI website that you can access. So about will give you a brief overview of the tool. Methods details how the initial metrics were produced out of the FAIR project. You'll see some of the stuff. You'll have seen some of the stuff in Robert's earlier slides. Docs, where you can see some documents and publications that have come out of the development of F-UJI. The ontology, which F-UJI uses as part of the tests, and then code, which will take you off to the GitHub pages. So I will quickly show you how F-UJI can be used. So I've got a DOI I found from our reshare collection. And there's 3 metrics now to choose from. I think in one of Robert's earlier slides, there was only 2. So there's the FAIR metrics, version 0.5. These are the generic metrics. There's the social science metrics full, which is where a social science test has replaced the equivalent generic test. So it's sort of the full suite of tests, but where possible, the social science metrics being used. So it might look at something more specific. So are they using DDI as a metadata standard? And then there's also social science part, which just runs through the social science tests. I'm going to run through the generic tests, as I should imagine that'll be more beneficial to everyone on the call. So you start the FAIR assessment. F-UJI runs, and then you get the assessment results. So you can see what level of fair Fuji's labeling you as, the initial target PID, what version of the metrics it's running on, what version of the software is running on. You're able to save your result, which will keep it here. So if you run it later on after you've made changes, or perhaps there's been changes to Fuji, you'll be able to see the different results over time. And you're also able to save your results in a JSON, which is the same JSON as you'll have seen on Robert's demo from the local installation. You can see at the principal level, so the FA, INR, how well you've scored, what you're doing well on, what you aren't. And then you can delve into each of the metrics and then see the tests that have been run, how you've scored, and how you haven't. So that's a very quick run through of the web demo. If you haven't already, I'd ask you to try it. I think some of the pros of using it is there's no setup required. It's easy to use for a single data set. And if you're using the save function or perhaps exporting JSONs, you can track a data set over time. Cons, it's a lot more difficult to assess multiple data sets compared to with the local installation that Robert demoed. And also you cannot change or add metrics, whereas I think there is scope to do that within the local installation. Is that right, Robert? I think that's how it's detailed on the GitHub page. So that's a very quick run through of the web demo. I think now we'll move on to the questions and answers. I've seen quite a few come in from the chat. So I think the first one I saw, and I think there's quite a bit of support for it, is, and I'll put this out to you, Robert, a Docker installation. Are there any plans for a Docker installation of Fuji?
Yeah, there was one provided, and I think it's also mentioned in the documentation on GitHub. So this can be done. I'm not sure if it still works with the latest version. You have to test it.
Lovely, thank you. So question one from Amy. When you use the online version of Fuji, you get a disclaimer stating that the current version is not yet fully stable, i.e. the tool is still being developed. What does this mean when interpreting your results? What additional changes are in the pipeline? When will a stable version become available?
Yeah, so this is just a disclaimer to state that there always are ways to expose metadata, for example, in ways Fuji could not find or interpret. So the ways to provide these are just legion. And so this means basically if you find a result on your data set which is not too good, so this does not mean you aren't fair. So it can also mean that Fuji just could not find this information. And so this statement means that we are continuously improving Fuji. So this is what we want to say, that when we state it is still being developed. As you have seen the version I installed here on my local server, and which is also on FujiWeb, is 3.4. So 3.5 is going to be released soon, which fixes some things or based on feedback I received. And if you are experiencing, for example, that Fuji did not find something which you are sure it should, so then you can just also use the GitHub page and create an issue so we can help you here. With respect to the second question, here maintenance of the tool. So it is going to be maintained here, well, at least until the end of this project. And since Fuji is also now part of some other European projects, at least to some degree. So maintenance and development will be continued also during the last years.
Yeah, thanks for that, Robert. And I think on what additional changes are in the pipeline. So like you say, there's a new version of the tool coming out that largely deals with making Fuji able to find stuff a bit more easily, but there's also a new version of the metrics being released soon, which I think you're probably best to answer, but will be tidying up a few things, but
Yeah,
not
so
too significantly, I think it's fair to say.
in particular, the metric I think here Mike just uploaded the new version to Zenodo. The metric, which is version number 0.8, now is more a reaction on community feedback we received. So Fuji was used during a lot of studies, and some of them were explicitly taking a look at metrics, and not only the metrics of Fuji, but also metrics and results from other tools. And well, the authors or some authors made some recommendations as well as discovered some discrepancies. So we reacted on that and actually tried to, well, yeah, make the Fuji metrics more, well, yeah, more compatible to the original spirit of the FAIR principles, let's say like that. So one thing was the taking care that each metric we defined really is within the scope of the principle it claimed to be. Another change of the metric was here according to suggestions and recommendations to really focus on fairness and not so much on data quality. So, and this, for example, affects tests we performed which were checking the content. So, for example, correctness of given metadata. So this is no longer going to be tested in here metric 0.8. The version step, by the way, is just because here the software metric already has 0.7, so we just wanted to avoid confusion. So this is just one, yeah, I think it's one big step forward. The third reason for the improvement of the metric was to make it more compatible to metrics used by the other tools. So I think this is also answering one of the questions I have seen here in the thread.
Yeah, I think that leads nicely onto the other fair assessment tools. Did you confront each other? Is there more convergence or divergence? I think, as you mentioned, there's more convergence. Is this also being looked at in OS Trails?
Yeah, I think in the Australis they are going looking more at the output. So each tool is actually testing different things. Some of the tests are very, very similar or testing the identical things, but other are just taking a look at different aspects of fairness. And so I would recommend to, well, also maybe use other tools and see what they are recommending.
Yeah, thank you. Angela asks, how can additional application profiles for other research domains be developed? I'm guessing that is how can other discipline-specific metrics be developed?
Yeah, this can be done to some degree by just changing the YAML file. For example, you can use the YAML file to exclude specific tests by just deleting them from the YAML file. And you can, for some tests, specify, for example, metadata properties you expect to be there. So this can be done doing that. And if you want to be more specific, then you have to just, yeah, unfortunately to, yeah, go deeper into the code and maybe define your own tests to do this.
Yeah, and you also sort of have to think about the authority of who's setting these metrics and standards, the benchmarks, I think they're being called in Strauss. Okay, that was so helpful. Sorry, this is from Emily. Is there a way to run a batch of DOI/PIDs on the API? I think you said that was possible, Robert.
Yeah, so this is what you can do if you install the service locally. Then you can just here, well, use a programming language, Python or whatever, and here run these tests in a loop simply, and then analyzing the results accordingly. But it's not possible on the web page.
Lovely. There's this site can't be reached, but I think that might be the URL of the demo you set up, Robert. So I'm guessing
Yeah,
you
it's
only spun that
localhost,
up
so it has
temporarily.
to run on your server. It's not a URI which exists. It's your own server. Localhost is your own machine.
We're really running out of time, so I'm just going to go to the questions that got the most thumbs up at the moment. If I understand right, there is a separate YAML for the social sciences.
This question is answered.
Okay, thank you, Monique. The next one is, why is 6 of 7 on findable moderate and not advanced in the example? I'm guessing that would be my example. And on the fly, I'm not sure we'd have an answer in the next 30 or so
I think this is just because the scale, these moderate and advanced is not directly connected to the numeric scale. So this is maybe a little bit confusing, but every test is here assuming in the background a certain maturity, implementation maturity with respect to fairness, and so this is just a different scale.
Lovely. I think that's sort of answered one of the questions on how did you define the priorities, such as incomplete, initial, moderate, and advanced.
Yeah, the idea was to try something which is which reminds a bit to the capability maturity model, which was at that time when we started this also set up for FAIR and for here repository trustworthiness from Hervé. So that was an experimental scale we just introduced, and it's going to change probably in the future.
Lovely. I think we've got one more question. Are you considering allowing the F-UJI tool to recognize a dataset domain so this is not selected by the user?
Yeah, that's actually, well, one strategy which is possible, and maybe it's even the better one. Instead of defining a specific metrics for each discipline, to just make the tool to recognize the discipline and say, okay, you obviously fulfilled some of the criteria of that specific community. It's on the list.
Yeah, lovely. Well, I'd like to say thank you, Robert, for your time today. I'm sure everyone appreciates it.
You're welcome.
I'd also like to pass on a thanks to Al and Micah for helping get this set up and running as smoothly as it has gone. And I'd also like to raise your attention to the next FAIR implementation workshop. So the next workshop is on the 24th of March, 1530 CET to 1700, and it's looking at the latest OAIS version and what does it mean for repositories. So if you haven't already, I'd recommend signing that up. That's proving to be a popular one. Thank you everyone for your time. We just about managed to make 1 o'clock, and I hope you have a good rest of your afternoon.